After 8 years of writing screenplays and reading countless others, I've noticed almost every screenwriter makes at least one of these 6 plot mistakes, and they don't even realize it. If your plot doesn't work, your script is dead on arrival. So in this video, I'll show you exactly what these mistakes are and how to fix them so your story actually keeps people hooked. Let's start with mistake number 1. And if you're doing this, you physically can't have a plot. I learned this one the hard way because I was doing it in my first 2, 3, maybe even 4 screenplays, and I didn't even realize I was doing it. I'd hear the same things like, I don't get your protagonist, or why is he doing any of this? And after hearing it a couple dozen times, it finally clicked. I wasn't giving my characters a goal. If you don't know what your character wants, you don't know your character. Before you type a single word, the most important thing you need to get crystal clear on is, what does my character want? This is the engine of your story. It drives every choice they make. It's what takes a flat, unrelatable character and makes them feel like a real person. And if you've written a screenplay where something just feels off, here's the fix. Step 1. Identify a macro goal. What is your protagonist working towards for the entire story? You know, are they trying to land a job? Are they trying to save a marriage or win a championship? This is the backbone of your plot. And step 2, go smaller. In every individual scene, ask yourself, what does my character want right now? So if his overarching goal is getting a job, the goal in one scene might be befriending his potential employer or doing research on how to get hired. Whatever it is, every scene needs a mini goal that pushes him closer or even further from that big goal. When you do this, your character will stop feeling like a collection of actions and start driving the story themselves. But having a goal is only the first step. If you're making this next mistake, it won't matter how cool your concept is or how interesting your world is or even how likable your characters are, because no one's going to care. Your story will feel like stuff is just sort of happening. And this is where I see so many screenplays fall apart, including my own when I started out. So don't beat yourself up for this, because it's going to happen. Think of the most iconic moments in movie history. You know, Neo dodging the bullets in The Matrix, Luke finding out who his father is in Star Wars, and the Psycho shower scene in, well, Psycho. What do all these moments have in common? It's more than just cool visuals or shocking plot twists. Each one has something crucial, but a lot of writers don't even realize it. It's not until you notice this missing ingredient that you understand why your story feels so flat. And that missing ingredient is conflict. Your character needs to be struggling constantly, because when you strip everything else away, a story is really just a character in conflict trying to get out of it. That's it. This applies to your entire story, and it applies to every single scene. If your scenes don't have any conflict, it's like trying to drive a car without any gas, because it's not going to go anywhere. So how do you avoid writing a bland story that doesn't have any conflict in it? Luckily, it's actually pretty simple. Go back to your character's goal and ask yourself, what is the worst possible thing that could happen to him right now? So again, if your character wants a job, maybe he shows up to the interview and he finds out that his ex is actually the employer. Or maybe that there's a picture of them floating around the internet that makes them look unprofessional, let's just say. Maybe he gets hit by a bus while he's on his way to his interview. Seriously though, it doesn't have to be like this outrageous. It just has to make it harder for your character to get what he wants. That's conflict. And when you do this right, your story finally comes to life. Now, let's talk about one of the most common plot mistakes. And the annoying part is you won't even notice you're doing it until it's too late. And I want to point out, this example is from one of my favorite movies, The Social Network. Aaron Sorkin is one of my all-time favorite writers, and I am in no way saying that I have anything against this movie. I'm just using this as an example. About halfway through the film, Mark meets Sean Parker, and they grab drinks, they hit it off, and Sean tells Mark that he should come out to California. A few months later, he does. And what's one of the first things that happens when they move out there? It turns out they live right across the street from each other. Like, come on.
We were right across the street. We saw the chimney. Yeah. Is anybody hurt? No, you live across the street.
I'm Sharon.
What are the odds of that happening? And it's funny because I think Aaron Sorkin actually said that he had the same thought and he was just like, whatever. And he just went with it. But it's still something that I think most writers should try to avoid. Things happening out of convenience. When things in your story feel like they're just happening to help your plot instead of coming from the story itself, The audience can sense that. So, what's the best way to avoid doing this? The thing about convenience is that it has nothing to do with the event itself. It's how it happens. Sean moving next to Mark is kind of just a random one-off event that really can't be justified by anything other than it's a small world. There's a very easy way Aaron Sorkin could have avoided this. Earlier in the movie, he could have just had Sean say to Mark, "Oh, I'm actually moving to this neighborhood soon." Suddenly, it's not convenient anymore because now we all know that he's there. So the key is to plant the seeds for the convenience earlier on. You know, like if you have a character who suddenly needs to be able to hotwire a car, then earlier in your story, just introduce the fact that as a kid, he stole cars all the time. Your job is not just to tell a story, it's to make every plot point feel like it couldn't have happened any other way. It's amazing how powerful it is to take advantage of the lens people are viewing your story through, which brings me to mistake number 4. Imagine you're watching a movie and maybe 15, 20 minutes in, the protagonist walks into his basement and we see that he's got a girl locked down there. You see the whole thing. You know, he brings her food, he gives her clothes, he even lets her wash herself. And naturally, you start to wonder, like, what is this? Why does he have this girl down there? And you get to the end of the movie without ever seeing her again. She's not even mentioned. I mean, how do you think that's gonna make you feel? Probably like you just wasted all of your time, right? And this leads to one of the most common but gruesome plot mistakes I see. It's kind of the reverse of the last mistake, but it's just as bad, if not worse. It's when you set something up, but you never pay it off. Anytime you introduce a detail, a character, or even a passing line, the audience's brain automatically files it away, you know? Because there's no such thing as a passing line. They might not even realize that they're doing it, but they're subconsciously thinking, oh, well, this was mentioned, so it's probably gonna be important later. Unless, you know, you're one of those annoying people who just uses their phone the whole time. So, what's the best way you can avoid doing this? A great example is in The Long Kiss Goodnight.
Here, I want you to keep a candle burning in the window for me. That's called keeping a vigil.
At first, this might feel irrelevant. A small personal moment between mother and daughter. I mean, it's an action thriller movie. What do we care what she does in her window? But then sure enough, later on, it comes into play when the daughter having a match on her ends up saving both of their lives.
Okay.
That's the power of paying things off. So here's the rule. If you introduce something early on in your story, make sure it somehow has relevance later on. Otherwise, you're just going to be wasting people's time. And speaking of wasting audiences' time, there's another mistake that so many writers make without even knowing they're doing it. And if you're not careful, you might be doing it too. This mistake will basically guarantee that people don't make it to the end of your movie. It's another subtle one, so it's very easy to miss, but I see it ruin scripts like all the time. So let me show you an example of a movie that avoids this mistake, Crazy Stupid Love. For most of the film, we watch Ryan Gosling and Steve Carell become friends in a very unorthodox way, let's just say, because Ryan's character teaches Steve how to pick up women. Steve watches Ryan go home with, well, a lot of women. But then he meets Emma Stone. You know, he actually wants to start a relationship with her and cut off all the little flings he has. It's pretty straightforward so far, right? By the way, I am about to spoil this movie because, bam, 70% through the movie, we all find out Emma Stone is Steve Carell's daughter. All of a sudden, the movie takes on a whole new meaning. This guy who's been teaching Steve Carell how to game women is dating his daughter. But imagine we knew this right off the bat. You know, like imagine the movie kicked off with someone saying, like, meet Steve's daughter, Emma, who's about to date his wingman. Now, would this ruin the movie? Maybe not, but it would have been so much less impactful and honestly maybe even a little boring. Because the writers wrote the plot so meticulously, it's a huge gut punch, not just to the characters, but to the audience. That's where most writers go wrong. They give away all the answers way too early. One of the most powerful tools that you have as a writer is withholding information. Not in a way that confuses people, because then you're just going to lose them, but in a way that creates anticipation. The best stories don't just hand you the answer, they make you want it. You know, they make you wait for it. There are a lot of different ways to do this. You know, a plot twist is just one of them. So how can you apply this yourself? At every single moment, just ask yourself, does the audience actually need to know this right now? If they do, keep it in. But if not, hold it back. Make them earn it. Whether it's a groundbreaking plot twist or a character reveal or even just the end of your story, the timing of information is what creates the thrill of reading it. Like in The Dark Knight, if Batman just came in and right off the bat he said, "Oh, by the way, I defeat the Joker, but then I sabotage myself so that people don't get mad at Harvey Dent for turning into a maniac." Like, what would be the point of watching it after that? If you give everything away up front, no one's going to pay attention. But even if you've timed all of your reveals perfectly, there's still one final mistake I see writers make all the time. And honestly, this is the one that I've seen my coaching clients struggle with the most. Mistake number 6 is treating your screenplay like you're building a house, because you're not. Here's what I mean. When you build a house, you have to follow a very strict blueprint. You can't just see what happens halfway through pouring the concrete. Every wall, every room, every inch has to be mapped out before you even pick up a hammer. That makes sense, right? A lot of writers think that this is the way that you're supposed to write a screenplay. It's easy to think that you need to meticulously craft every single beat, twist, and moment before you ever write a single word. I'm not saying that you can't do this. It is 100% possible to write a screenplay from a planned structure. But the problem is that a lot of writers get stuck in this stage. So they spend months or even years obsessing over their outline. I literally had a writer come to me telling me he was stuck in his outline for 13 years. 13 years. And then when it's finally time to write the script, it doesn't work. The scenes feel forced. The characters don't behave like people, and they just feel even more stuck. Why? Because unlike a house, a screenplay is flexible. It's meant to be discovered. With a screenplay, if you mess something up, you can just fix it. You're typing into a computer or writing on paper. It's very easy to make adjustments, which is why you should stop writing meticulously planned outlines before you dive into your screenplay. But that's just crazy, isn't it? I mean, how in the world are you supposed to write a screenplay without an outline? Literally, you just sit down and type the thing. Start at page 1 and go from there. See where your characters take you. I know that you might feel like you can't think of anything, but I promise you, you are very capable of doing this. Because I'm not saying you absolutely can't have some idea for where your story's going, or maybe even want to do something specific for the inciting incident and the midpoint. But forcing your story to hinge on extremely deliberate plot points before you've even written the thing, it's like trying to jam a key into a hole that doesn't fit. Either it's never going to happen or you're just going to break it. But if you do it this way, you'll be shocked at how much more natural your plot starts to feel and how much easier it is for you to uncover moments that you never would have found if you were glued to a rigid outline.
Is there a problem?
No, I'm just thinking.
No. No thinking. That comes later.
Yes, outlines can absolutely be useful. But if you keep getting stuck, it's just not worth it. You're better off to just start writing. And plus, things you wouldn't have thought of otherwise present themselves because you're not locking yourself into a particular path. There is a time for outlining, but it's not until after you get your final draft down. And now that you know how to avoid these 6 major plot mistakes, there's something else that might ruin even the strongest of stories. If you want to see me go to insane depths in how to avoid this, click this link here to see everything I've ever learned about screenwriting.